Hey, P World History. I am here today to finish up our PowerPoint on Han China and the end of Han China. So, as you know, the Han went through several expansions. And of course, when you have these armies invading other areas and going to expand your empire, you use up a lot of surplus. You use up surplus money, you use up surplus agriculture, etc. So what do you need to do in order to use up, or in order to replace that? You need to raise taxes. Um, you need to confiscate land. So some of the land was confiscated from the farmers so that they could farm it and use it for their own purposes. And as a result, investment in both manufacturing and trade declined. Now, they manufactured silk at this time. That was an important manufacturer, as well as paper. So overall, these expeditions are just costing way too much money. They're keeping the money out of development of their uh, trade and economy and putting it into the expeditions. Now, this would also, at this time, we also see an increase in stratification between the rich and the poor, the rich becoming richer and the poor becoming poorer. All of these things are very typical economic and social problems that occur when an empire or a civilization or a country tries to expand too rapidly and becomes too involved militarily. Um, we also see a variety of land distribution problems. This is a constant theme throughout Chinese history and one that has been addressed numerous times. So Wang Man, he ruled from 9 to 23 CE, claimed the mandate of heaven from the prior emperor. And as you might recall, the mandate of heaven would suggest that the ruler must rule justly and wisely. And Wang Man believed that this was not the case. He is called the socialist emperor. So if you think of the term socialist, you probably have an idea what socialism is, and this includes redistributing land. So one of the things that he did was to limit the amount of land that someone could own and broke up estates. And the idea behind this is that contrary to the prior slide where we have a growing disparity between the rich and the poor, the idea here was that by breaking up the estates, we could more equalize uh, the stratification between the rich and the poor. Um, However, after the land redistribution, a string of bad weather came along. There were poor harvests and there was famine, and Wang Man was thus overthrown and actually killed in 23 CE. Um, the later Han Dynasty would see the emperors regain control and a resurgence again in land distribution problems. The Yellow Turban Uprising you can read about in your textbook, but the Yellow Turbans represented the land, and this was a group of people that were um, uh, they were protesting some of the policies of the later Han Dynasty. The Han would collapse in 220 CE, and it collapsed for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons was court had just become ridiculous. There were so many people that were trying to take power in court. First of all, you have the imperial family, you have the emperor himself and the rest of his family at court. We have scholars. The bureaucrats that had gone to Confucian school, and they are wanting power. And then we have the eunuchs, and we haven't talked about eunuchs yet, but eunuchs are castrated males, and this means that they cannot produce, so that they cannot reproduce, rather, so they can't have children of their own to challenge the official leadership of the imperial family. However, the eunuchs themselves became very, very powerful in the inner circle of the emperor, and in some cases took control. 2,000 eunuchs were actually killed because they were believed to be conspiring against the emperor. Eventually, due to many internal factions um, as well as attacks from outside of China, from uh, different tribal groups, the empire dissolved and China once again divided into regional kingdoms and was no longer unified as an empire. So from Qin dynasty in 220 CE, BCE rather, to 220 CE, we have a unified China, and once again, China collapses into regional kingdoms. Now, the three ways of thought that we discussed in class today were Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. And what I'd like to do here is just finish today by giving you the highlights of each of them that you should put into your notes. First of all, the teachings of Confucius were recorded in what's called the Analects. This is a book. You can download a free copy of it if you'd like, if you have an iPad. It's public domain. Um, 551 to 479 BCE is when these were recorded, and the ideas centered around ethics and politics as well as values. So Junzi is the concept of a superior individual, one who follows the order of society, who respects the ancestors. The values that were promoted in the Analects were Ren, which is kindness, Li, propriety, which means to act proper and with dignity, and Shao, which is filial piety, which means loyalty to one's family. The works of Confucius were promoted by Mencius from 372 to 289 BCE and Junzi from 298 to 238 BCE. As I mentioned before, Confucius and Confucian ideas would become extremely important in China and remain so to this day. Taoism, also known as Taoism. This is supposedly a picture of Laozi, the founder of Taoism. And as we saw in class, pacifism and rejection of active attempts to change the course of events really was central to the Tao, or the way of nature, of the cosmos. It's really, at its root, is this concept of non-striving. And by non-striving, that we could just live in harmony with nature. So Wu Wei was to restore order by disengagement. It was believed that attempts at control result in chaos, and that simply living in harmony with nature was a way to have a happy and peaceful life. And, you know, they had some good points. I'm not going to lie about that. There certainly are some value in their way of thought, but on a practical level, it didn't work for running a country of many hundreds of thousands of people. Legalism would be the way that Xin got into power, but the concept of legalism predates Xin. Shang Yang and Han Fiese are both chief legalists. They promoted this idea of the development of the state, very ruthless control, not concerned with ethics or morality, but really concerned with just making sure that one follows what they are told to do by the state. This picture here is a classic picture of a man who is merely instructed to carry a log from one end of town to another. And for doing that, just based on the instruction of, I believe this is Han Fezi here, he's rewarded, he's commended for that. Legalism promoted the idea of collective responsibility, which means that if you see your neighbor doing something that they shouldn't be doing, then it is your responsibility to make sure that somebody knows about that and that person can be corrected. And the corrections were often really, really quite strict punishments, and some that would seem quite brutal in our modern day. The agriculture and military were the cornerstones of the state, according to legalism, and of course agriculture was important in order to feed the soldiers. And they distrusted intellectual and cultural pursuits, and as we already mentioned, had buried alive 400 some Confucian scholars. So, oh, this is Shang Yang. So in the end, legalism would unite China. Confucianism would end up becoming an important aspect of the Han Dynasty, and the Confucian universities and schools would become very important throughout China's history. And Taoism will always remain there. There will always be within Chinese society those who embrace the Taoist ideas. So that's it for China for this chapter, and I will catch you the next time. Thanks.